Hello, John. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Claire. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We've been reading about some new and interesting attacks online recently, even here in Australia. Have any of these caught your eye?
Yeah, there's been a couple lately that speak to the increasing sophistication of what's going on in the world at the moment.
Okay. Tell us about your favourite.
Well, I don't know if it's a favourite, but one of the significant ones at the moment is an attack that's taken place in Australia. A particular individual has copied the website of a few high-profile organisations. He's done a very thorough job with names, addresses, financial service licence information. Everything you need to verify the site has been faked on this particular site. And he has convinced people to invest in financial services products through these fake sites. At first blush, they appear to be the real deal, but under detailed scrutiny, you can start to see a few gaps. He's been successful in harvesting over $1.5 million from people, and he's done this in attacks of usually over $100,000 at a go, dragging in some quite sophisticated investors into the catch.
So you said some of these people who've been caught out are quite sophisticated. How has he managed to do that?
Well, it's been a very thorough job. If you call, you speak to a gentleman with an English accent, he talks you through all of the different products. They have a number of offerings designed for different risk appetites. If you go to the site and look it up, it references all of the right real sites and links off to them. It seems to have good names. It mirrors sites that exist, so it looks as though you're dealing with real organisations. Again, it gets very hard to distinguish that it's not the real deal in some of these cases.
Yeah. So some of the investors that came through, what were they looking to buy or thinking that they were buying on this website or investing in?
Yeah, generally they're looking to invest in funds. The funds will have different risk appetites, so there'll be a number of funds. There'll be detailed explanations of them on the site. They'll have done all of the background on the types of funds, what they'd invest in, the risk appetite, very, very detailed breakdown of the funds themselves. And if you call the numbers, you speak to a man with an English accent always. We think it's the same man behind them all, who then explains them and explains the funds and what they do and why you would invest in the different funds. So he's gone spearfishing for some very high-profile people, designed to put a lot of effort into a few people to extract a lot of money.
So did he actually target these investors, or they just came across his purported website out there? How did he reel people in?
Now, as far as we can tell, he targeted a number of people. Now, I don't think he specifically went after a person, but he went after a class of person. And by doing it the way he did, he knew that he would attract some people out of that class. He was only after people who had significant funds to invest, so seems to have been successful enough for the moment.
And so how did some of these people start to realise that things were not what they seemed?
So there's a few usual giveaways, but in one particular case, the fund even played a dividend. But when the dividend turned up, it wasn't from one of the financial organisations you'd expect. It was actually from a totally different type of business. And that raised the concern of the people who'd invested. But unfortunately, by that stage, it was too late. Now, you may ask, why did they pay a dividend at all? Well, by returning a dividend, which incidentally was out of his original investment, it wouldn't have been new money, you can start to build the legitimacy and you can start to encourage that individual to either invest more money or to recommend the site to other people. But when it turned up, he was diligent enough at this point to notice that the name wasn't right. He was already on his guard at that point, but unfortunately it was too late and the funds were gone.
What kind of sums were people losing? What were people investing in?
The smallest I've heard of was 100,000 and the highest was 500,000.
Wow.
So a significant amount of money.
Okay, so as you said, not unsophisticated victims here necessarily. Have we learned anything about what people could do to try and identify this as a fake? Were there any telltale signs, any red flags, anything that's come out in the wash that people can now look out for?
It's still early days and we're getting some data through on this, but at the moment it looks incredibly sophisticated. You could call the number, you could speak to someone, they would explain all of the details. The site contained backlinks through to the original suppliers. The only way you potentially could have picked it up was if you went to the true site of the organisation that was supposed to be behind them. You wouldn't be able to find any links leading off to this rogue site. The rogue site could link back, but of course the real sites would never link forward. The problem, of course, is that some of the sites for these big organisations are quite large, and actually navigating through them to find out that they really did not contain a forward link to this site would be a very time-consuming task. Quite often people would explore a bit and then decide, well, I've run out of time, I just can't find it, I'll go directly to the website, which of course is what they're looking for you to do.
What about other avenues, like maybe calling a number on the official site, or a number of different, trying to contact the organisations separately to determine if this is a valid service, a valid offering?
Yeah, look, as with all of these things, the best way to do it is to put aside the information that's been sent to you, reach out to the original sources separately and try and find. So if it was a large financial organisation, call the head office, speak to them, say you've found this particular fund, what's going on, can you put them through to that fund through the switchboard? They'll very quickly be able to tell you that there is no such fund. Right.
Okay.
So to actually open that second channel and use that to verify independently the existence or not of this particular fund would have probably been about one of the few ways of doing it.
It's almost like a different form of multi-factor authentication.
It's exactly like multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
You can't trust anything they send you. You have to go and establish your own connections.
Mm-hmm. And is this a current threat?
It's been closed down for the moment, but the perpetrator hasn't been identified.
Okay.
And if he's been that successful, you can bet he's going to try it again.
Is it isolated? Have you seen examples of this in other countries? Or
it goes on around the world. This is one of the most recent ones that's this thorough in Australia. I wouldn't be surprised if this particular person popped up again, probably targeting a different area, looking to catch people off their guard again. Obviously, if he tried financial services again, I would hesitate, but I'd guess that he probably has some sort of financial services background in order to have done such a good job. So something related to financial services will probably be his next target. So anyone looking for financial services in general, be aware, but it might turn into credit, it might turn into risk reporting, I don't know. But there's a whole area there that I think he'll try to target.
And the takeaway here is to find separate independent channels to verify what you're doing anytime you're thinking about putting even small but certainly large amounts of money to an investor.
Absolutely.
Online.
Absolutely. In this case, he's managed to convince some people out of their entire life savings. It's just disastrous. And so if you're ever looking to invest a significant chunk of your money into one destination, be very, very aware, be very careful.
Okay, and now if we can turn our attention to another interesting story that you found this week. You've heard about increased sophistication on the dark web in terms of the data that's available on there. Tell us a little bit about that, John.
Yeah, absolutely, Claire. We've had a few cases with customers in the last week or two where information has been found for sale on the dark web that contains references to their employees. Those references are usually the name of the individual, their title within the bank, some other details, matched with their personal email address and a password. And what's happened there is someone is building a database of the employees, so they're probably scraping sources like LinkedIn to find the employees of the company. And then when they find an email trove with a name that matches, they'll link them up and then add them back into to enrich the data and to have a more valuable item for sale. Fortunately, so far, the data has always been slightly off or slightly old, but it does show that there's organisations out there maintaining databases of employees looking for opportunities to enrich that data, to add more to it. If they start being able to match the real email addresses from the company, then hey presto, they know exactly who they're targeting. We've also found them using that in order to build credibility. So they can now send emails from an address that has the right name, that does belong to the employee, pretending to be the employee, and send that in to organisations like HR, saying, it's Jim Smith here, I need you to change something for me in the way of how my pay is handled. You can reach me on this account, and quite often it's an address that they used in the first place when they were getting the job before they had a corporate address, and so it may be a recognised address that's now been compromised. So there's danger in these even though they're not perfect.
What are some other examples of how this type of information can be used? Why do you think they're going to the trouble of building and enriching these data sets?
Yeah, the primary use, of course, is to find a way into an organisation. If I can get a compromised account that simply lets me log in and access the inside of the organisation, that's fantastic. But in a lot of cases, you can't do that. So what they're looking to do is to build legitimacy. They will then use this information to try and prove that they are the person, that they know the person, that they work with the person, in order to try and build a relationship with someone else in the organisation. We've seen this before. Typically a target would be HR, where they will be reaching out to HR to pretend to be the employee or pretend to be acting with or on behalf of the employee. They might even start an email chain with other emails to make it look like they've actually been talking amongst multiple employees before they send it in, trying to get it past the HR people in order to build that legitimacy and that relationship.
And is there anything we can do to protect ourselves against, I suppose not necessarily the data sets getting built up, but for the effectiveness of this data, what can we do?
So three things. One is to be aware that this happens. Simply knowing that it happens makes it easier to pick it up. The second one is if anyone contacts you from a channel that doesn't look quite right, don't respond to them on that channel. As I was saying before, stop, reach out to them through a channel that you know is good. So go back to the HR records, reach out to them on the second channel. The second channel gives you a way of bypassing whatever was sent to you and reaching out to them directly. And there's a good chance, if it's been fraudulent, that you'll be able to pick it up at that sort of stage. Another thing with the dark web to remember is that when you are worried about information turning up on the dark web, you can always come to companies like RIVI, where we constantly scan the dark web for troves of information that contain our clients' names. So if you do end up in some of these troves, we can detect that and report it to you, and that gives people a chance to change the passwords before they actually get exploited.
That's really interesting, John. I've noticed myself on my Google browser that where it stores my passwords, that sometimes it will indicate to me that a number of my passwords are compromised. Luckily they're all older ones that have now changed. How does Google do that? Are they doing something similar?
Yeah, they are doing something similar. So what they will say is, you've just gone to a site, abc.com. We have a password for you for abc.com, but Google, scanning the dark web troves, have noticed that there was a release of usernames and passwords that have been stolen from abc.com. And so they will warn you that the username and password you're using to log into fictitious abc.com is the same as one that was found in a trove on the dark web, reported to belong to abc.com. So they will bring that to your attention to say, well, we've seen this password. There are a couple of other sites, such as haveibeenpwned.com, that you can go to, where you can enter your email addresses usually, and it will tell you if it's found a match for them in the dark web.
Okay.
Again, RIVI offers a service whereby we will do this for you automatically on a daily basis to keep an eye out for these sort of attacks.
And what should one do if one's password is found on the dark web?
Change the password straight away.
Okay.
That's the safest thing to do. That simply invalidates it. But again, be aware that some of these troves come back and will contain lots of information. Simply because the password's been changed and they can't get into the email anymore, the rest of the information may still have some value to attackers.
Interesting. So RIVI scans the dark web.
So RIVI employs a number of services that go onto the dark web on our behalf and extract information belonging to clients if they can find it. They bring it back to us, we assess the risk and then advise our clients if we think that there's something they should be taking action on.
Okay, thanks. And now finally, tell us, John, what is your hack of the week?
Well, we've had some interesting ones just today. Notifications through to people saying, in this case, your Norton antivirus has been renewed. If this was correct, fantastic. If not, call us here and we can organise a refund. For a start, that's a slightly odd angle for anyone to take, to admit that you can call me for a refund. Normally you would simply send them a receipt. When you call the number, you get put through to what sounds like a VoIP call, and you end up speaking to someone offshore, someone from a different country, and they then try to get your details so that they can process the refund. Of course, what they're really trying to do is just to retrieve your bank account details, either for direct exploitation or for adding to some of the databases we just talked about, so they have even more information about you. It may be coincidental, but for the particular company that was issuing or was being faked today with the invoices, at the same time their website stopped issuing the telephone numbers. If you went through the Call Me and clicked on the Call Now button, it didn't go anywhere, the links had all been disabled. So we're not sure, but we're wondering there if someone had gone so far as to actually attack the website and wipe out your ability to find the direct number for them. Therefore, what was on the receipt would be the only number you would have to be able to call. If that happens, you can always go to Google, you can always go to other business registers and look for an independent number from those registers. and use that to call the company in order to try and verify that it really is who they say they are.
Interesting. It's also interesting that the three examples we've talked through today are very different, but they have that common theme of finding independent channels for verification. So it feels like that's something that we're going to need to do on an increasing basis.
Absolutely. Getting the hang of using that second channel, of being able to contact them in a way that's different to the way you were contacted, I think is just so important. Hackers will eventually find ways of trying to compromise that, but it is very difficult to do. And so I'm really pleased if anyone has any concerns, reach out through that second channel.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.